Welcome YouTube, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. So, this is an incredibly important video. I think this is the beginning of the most important work I have done yet. And it has to do with everything we have been intuiting about the Matrix, about how the elites are seeking to control human population, and how AI, artificial intelligence, is being set up to be the new God that we worship. Now, first off, I have to apologize to everybody to whom I have argued with in the past, who tried to tell me all the things that people are starting to talk about, all of the tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff. I'm not going to get into too much detail here on YouTube because YouTube has community guidelines, and since YouTube is a private company, I'm going to respect that. But I'm going to lay out some things here for you today about the threefold matrix. We are entering into the third phase of the matrix. There has been two phases for the past 2,000 years. We are now entering the third one. Now, the good news is that even though there is an actual matrix, it's not what you think. It's not even what I thought. And so, as I've said in the past, even though I was wrong for the right reasons. And now, because of things that I have discovered that have been undeniable, showing a conspiracy that goes deeper than anything I could have possibly imagined, deeper and more amazing than any science fiction creation out there, even more amazing than the movie The Matrix. Since I've come to that understanding, I now have some information about what's been going on. I've been doing a lot of meditating and a lot of spiritual work, and I have seen, I believe, what has been happening and what is happening. So the good news is that you can escape this matrix, this third phase of the matrix that is now being put together. And everybody needs to take some very specific action. So watch this video all the way through, but then go to Odysee.com, ODYSEE.com, and look for my channel there, thunderwizard.com, thunderwizard, DOTCOM, because I'll start talking about what actually is going on in this third phase of the matrix. And as you see here in the title, the matrix is a biological interface. You can call it the biomatrix. It's actually a biological and digital matrix. And it's the fusion of biology and digital technology to create the third and final phase. And we are being programmed, set up, manipulated, herded into walking straight in and asking for this digital biological matrix interface. And so we need to take actions to prevent that from happening, which I will talk about in depth on Odysee. But let's get through it. So today what I'm going to share with you is that there is a threefold matrix. Now there's two matrices. This is very important for you to understand. There are two matrices, not just one. So when people talk about escaping the matrix, if you've been listening to me, I have been sharing to you that the matrix, or Maya, is in fact the web of weird. It is space-time. It is three-dimensional physical existence, and that there is a matrix that we can not only connect to, but that we can control. We don't want to escape that matrix. we created that matrix so that we could become more evolved, that we could become like gods. But what I didn't know, and what you guys were intuiting, listen, David Icke is intuiting what is happening. People who talk about aliens implanting chakras to control you, that's not accurate, but they're intuiting something that is and has been happening. When people talk about needing to escape this matrix, to take the red pill, to unplug, when people talk about the dangers of AI, and people are, talking about microchipped implants in your, in vaccines that hook you up to 5G. Those aren't entirely accurate, but people are intuiting what actually is happening, and they're doing their best. Their minds, their spirits, and their imaginations are trying to create what they know to be true inside, but they can't prove. The idea that there's this elite class that has underground bases where children are sacrificed to reptilian gods. All of this is happening, but not in that way. Those are all symbols of the unconscious. The unconscious is trying to tell us something. I am going to lay it out for you. I finally see it. So as I said, as I've been saying, I was wrong for the right reasons. The right reasons are that I am a warrior of critical thinking. And so critical thinking has allowed me to, when I saw the evidence that showed me that there was in fact an undeniable conspiracy to control the human race, take over the whole world, when I saw there was one thing that showed me undeniable proof, and I followed that using my critical thinking, and now I've arrived where I'm at. But now I understand what's been going on. There isn't one matrix, there are two matrices. And so I'm going to spell that out for you. So before I get lost any further in my, as I am wont to do, to get lost in tangents, let me lay out for you what I'm going to continue to reveal to you in much deeper ways, in the coming weeks and months. So this is just an introduction to let you know what is coming in terms of, what we're going to be talking about and why it's even more important than ever. I didn't understand why I was being pushed to reveal this secret spiritual technology. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know that I got that message and the door opened up and I started teaching it. But to be honest, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I giving out this most powerful of information, to people over the internet like this? Now I know. So it's more important than ever. If you haven't done it already, go check out the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. For those, who want to be the elites, you can go here to maoshan.thunderwizard.com. We will talk about that. Let me explain to you what the two matrices are, and I'm going to be starting to share with you the secret teaching of the mirror, the secret teaching of the butterfly. Some of you have contacted me and said, I feel like I'm working on this mirror thing that you're talking about. And I've said, no, that's not it. Well, it's true that you may not have completely understood, but the truth is I'm only now seeing for the first time what this mirror teaching is, the path of the butterfly. This is essential. If we don't understand this, then you can get lost. Have you seen the movies, the fantasy movies where somebody gets trapped inside of a mirror and then the other mirror image takes them over? That again is a symbol of the unconscious of what is actually happening here. There are two matrices, and you cannot escape either of them. Sorry to tell you. One matrix will lead you toward the path of enlightenment and ascension, where you do escape. You escape reincarnation. You escape limitation. You escape Maya. And then there's another matrix that binds you to limitation, that binds you to illusion. But the good news is that the matrix that binds you to illusion is about to be broken. It's about to be, when I say about to, I mean in the, in terms of the world. It might not be today or tomorrow, but we're coming towards, I keep telling you, we're heading for a shift. When that shift hits, that secondary, less desirable matrix will be demolished. But that doesn't mean between now and then that people can't get trapped in the undesirable matrix. So let me get into, I've written a ton of notes here so that I would stay on topic here. So there are two matrices, and there are three selves. So there are three phases to each matrix. We are just about to enter, in fact, we've already entered it, the very first stages of the third phase of what I'm calling here the biomatrix. We have just begun to enter that third phase. But that means that spiritually speaking, we have also just entered the third phase of the other matrix, the matrix of ascension. So there's a matrix of de-evolution, and there's a matrix of ascension. So when people talk about escaping the matrix, they're talking about escaping the matrix of de-evolution. They don't know that's what they're saying, but that's what they're saying. And the escape from the matrix of de-evolution is simply shifting to the matrix of evolution, of ascension. And it is here. No more talking. It's here. It's here now. All right, so we have two matrices and we have three selves. And so each matrix has been going in phases. And we've just entered now the third phase. So bear in mind the matrix is a mirror. So there's mirror image. What is happening in one matrix is happening in the other. But it's a bizarro world. It's an opposite world. All right, so however negative the experiences that you are having in this world, when you look and you see that this world is run by the elites, it is run by the banks, it is run by secret cabals. There are very real dangers in terms of what's happening in our physical reality with things that I won't mention on YouTube. You are right about those things. Those things are very real. But what you may not have known is that the spiritual mirror image of that matrix is also heading into the third phase, which means that simply a shift in your energy and your awareness. You have to have both. A shift in your energy and your awareness, and then you will escape the matrix. You will escape the matrix of de-evolution. By the way, that's what this, now I realize what this is. What this is doing when you go here and you do the lightning qigong and you press play and you do those practices with me, you are shifting the vibration of the cells in your body. If you haven't done this and you want to know what that feels like, go onto this free YouTube channel and do the Summoning of the Immortals Qigong. Awakening the Immortals, I think it's called. Do that. That's a free gift to you. Do that and you will feel. I guarantee you, in fact, I challenge you to do it and not have an experience of higher vibration in your body. So that is my gift to you, but I also offer this because now I know what it is I'm doing here, more than I ever have. All right, Two matrices, they are the mirror of each other, and there are three selves. As you know, I've been teaching this for a long time. You can see it in my books. You can see it in all kinds of everywhere that I have stuff taught. We have three selves. We have a higher self, a lower self, and a middle self. And these three energy centers, these three selves, are reflected in all true spiritual paths that have an unbroken connection into prehistory. It's very important. And we see that in my ethnic background, the Norse, where they talk about the trinity of Odin, Vili, and Ve. Odin is higher awareness. Vili is the navel center or power or will. Vili means will. And Ve, which means sacred space. It's the same in the Hindu. They have Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. They have the purifier, the creator, Brahma, and Vishnu, the preserver. So we are heading into both of these matrices, the matrix of ascension as well as the matrix of de-evolution. We are entering the third phase. And here's the good news. You can switch from one matrix to the other like that, simply by choosing to. So don't get the feeling that, oh, I've been in the other matrix for this long. It's been going on for this many years. It's going to take me. No, you can switch like that. It happened with me overnight. You saw what happened. You can go back and watch me chastising people for coming onto the channel with these conspiracy theories, and we don't do that on this channel, and I'm not going to buy into your victim mentality. And then one day, here I am going, you guys were right. I was wrong. Now, you were wrong about the specifics, but that's okay. Your intuition, your unconscious mind was telling you through symbolism what is actually going on. The movie The Matrix is brilliant because that is exactly where we're at. We are at beginning of phase 3, where there's going to be a biological interface with the biomatrix, the digital biomatrix. The difference where the movie got it wrong is that there aren't going to be actual, cables, stuck in your neck and your spine. It's actually going to be wireless. It's going to be a wireless bio-digital connection. I'm not going to talk about it here on this channel. We'll talk about it on the Odyssey channel. But let me continue with my introduction here. So there's two matrices and three selves, and each phase of the matrix deals with one of the selves. Okay? So we first dealt with the lower center. That was programmed about 2,000 years ago and has been continuously programmed since then. That is the psychological, spiritual phase. The second matrix that was, the second phase of the matrix was the higher self. The higher self was developed and empowered, and you've been programmed on that level in both of the matrices, depending on your focus in life. If you're a spiritually focused person, your higher self has been programmed. If you've been wrapped up in the chaos and your lower self, your lower nature, then you have been part of the matrix of de-evolution. But bear in mind, we all go back and forth because we live in a mirror. So we bounce back and forth between the two mirrors. But when you are aware, you can choose which mirror you want to be in. All right, we'll talk more about that as time goes on. So there's two matrices and three selves. The spiritual matrix is spiritual consciousness, quantum entanglement, everything associated with evolution and ascension and enlightenment, achieving Valhalla. All of that is what the spiritual matrix is designed to do. And that's why you have spiritual practices that have philosophies as well as physical practices, because your physical body is what you use to plug into the matrix. You plug into the negative matrix through negative things, violence, anger, drugs, alcohol. Those things plug your physical body into the negative matrix. Physical practices like yoga, meditation, tai chi, qigong, walking in the forest, spiritual ritual, that physical act combined with the spiritual philosophy associated with that plugs you into the side of the mirror, which is the matrix of evolution and enlightenment. This seems fairly common sense, right? That's why when people come on the channel, you hear me say, listen, all this talk is great. If all you doing is coming onto my channel during the live stream and listening to me babble on and on, you're only getting 1% of it. Because you have to back that up, because your physical body is, whether you like it or not, your physical body is connecting you to one or both of the matrices. And if you do nothing with your body, then by default, your body will connect directly to the dark matrix, if you will. If you do spiritual practices with discipline, yoga, meditation, tai chi, qigong, the lightning qigong, the Mao Shan practices, take your pick, walking in the forest, it doesn't matter. Physical fitness, these kinds of things plug your body directly into the mirror of light, for lack of a better, phrase. All right, so let's keep going here. So we've already talked about the three selves. You have Odin, Vili, and Ve. You have Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. You have heaven, earth, and man in the Taoist tradition. You have mind, body, and spirit. These are there for a reason, because these are the three phases. Okay, so, all right, I've told you all that, and I'm looking at my notes here. So the physical matrix, let's talk about the matrix that you want to escape and the three phases. So there are three phases to the physical matrix. Again, we are entering phase 3. The first phase was the psychological and spiritual programming. So bear in mind, the matrix is trying to program you. Whichever matrix you're in, it's trying to program you. Literally. The first phase of either one was psychological and spiritual. I'll get into the specifics of that. The phase 2 is the technological and intellectual programming. And again, when I use the term technology in terms of spirituality, guess what we're talking about? We're talking about things like this. This is a technology. It's not a technology in the same way that my phone is a technology. My phone is a physical thing that connects me wirelessly to my computer is a technology. It's a physical thing. But your body is actually, it is a technological entity. And certain movements and postures, there is a technology, a spiritual technology. Yoga is a spiritual technology. Qigong, this stuff, all these things are technologies of the body. All right? So in phase 2, there was a technological and intellectual programming in the mirror of darkness, the mirror of evil. It was actual physical stuff. Physical technology, along with intellectual brainwashing that divorced the intellect from the spirit. This is why during phase 2, and I'll give you the dates, you'll know what I talk about. Right around phase 2, in those dates, you see the eruption of atheism. Atheism is a reflection of the intellect being divorced from spirituality. Phase 3. Phase 3 is a digital and biological programming. So for phase 3, I'll talk about that. That may be confusing. Well, what's the spiritual side of phase 3? We'll talk about that. All right. So those are the three phases. Phase 1 is psychological and spiritual. Phase 2 is technological and intellectual. Phase 3 is digital and biological, programming on all levels. Phase 3 is the apocalypse. Phase 3 is every spiritual tradition. My ancestors talked about Ragnarok. Even in the Bible, they talk about the apocalypse. Every single tradition talks about some kind of apocalypse. That is the end result of phase 3. Doesn't mean the end of the world the way you know it. It doesn't mean the world blowing up the way you know it. It means a complete destruction of reality as you understand it. Okay? I don't even know what that means yet. Well, we're going to find that out as time goes on. So let's talk about the 3 phases on the negative side. The 3 phases of the matrix in terms of the physical, the dark side of the mirror, use whatever, the lower vibrational self, the destruction, heading towards destruction, whatever word you want to use. The matrix you want to escape from. Let's talk about those 3 phases. Phase 1. Phase 1 started about 2,000 years ago, and as I said, it's connected to the lower self. And at this time, and not right exactly 2,000 years, there was a period before that. It was the period of empires. Because there was a point in time where there was no such thing as an empire. Everybody lived in, they were either hunter-gatherers or they were very early Stone Age farmers. People lived in small groups. They lived at one with the land. There was no such thing as giant nations or empires. And then there were. And this was the beginning of the phase 1. So just to give you an example, in the Vedic Hindu tradition, there are things called yantras. This is a yantra. This is a yantra that is used not only by my ancestors, but it's also this exact symbol is used in Vedic Hinduism, and it is a yantra. So you've seen yantras. I could show you one like the Shri Yantra. If you want to see what a yantra looks like, you don't know what I'm talking about, go on to Google and type in SHREE, and then the second word, YANTRA, Shri Yantra. You'll see a really cool design, really multifaceted, looks like a 3-dimensional design. Yantras were when you did mantra, Om Mane Padme Hum, or whatever your mantra is. Om Namah Shivaya. Whatever your mantra was, you had one of these usually carved in copper. Like the symbol was carved in copper, and it's in front of you. And you'll be chanting your mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Whatever your mantra is, what ends up happening is that yantra starts to become stimulated, empowered by the vibrations of the tone. Even if you think it, some people will tell you that's the most powerful one. You put the yantra in front of you and you think, Om Namah Shivaya. You don't say it, you think it. The yantra starts to be activated. When you have done the required amount of repetitions, whether that's a karmic thing, if you look on mantras, they say you have to chant this mantra 26,000 times or whatever it is. And when you've reached the amount of repetitions that bring you, perfection of that, then what ends up happening is a deity appears on the yantra. When that happens, the deity will say, "What do you want?" So if you go Om Namah Shivaya and you have the yantra for Shiva and it takes you 10 years or whatever it is, finally you get to the maximum number of vibrations or the minimum number of vibrations to fully activate the yantra, and Shiva will appear in front of you. And Shiva will say, "What can I do for you? What do you want?" And at that point, you will, if you have a request, Shiva will grant it. If you want to rule the world, Shiva will make you ruler of the world. Just to give you an idea. Now, the idea, by the time that you've been doing Om Namah Shivaya for 10 years, by that time, it's very unlikely you're going to want to rule the world. You'll want spiritual enlightenment. So you can see how, Shiva says, "I'll give you anything you want if you can master my mantra with this yantra." Now, when we hit phase 2, yantras were replaced with idols. So before there were idols, like now you go into, into India, you see idols of all the gods. But originally there was no such thing as an idol. There was only yantras. There was only these diagrams. And the diagrams were the deity. And the same is true for my ancestors. When the Romans first got to northwestern Europe, they said these people don't worship. Tacitus said the Germanic tribes people do not worship in buildings. They don't have cities. They don't worship the gods in human form. They worship a tree or a rock or a waterfall or a river. They see the gods in nature, the sky, the ocean. That was the original spirituality. That was before we got to phase 2. So phase 1, as I talked about, is the psychological spiritual programming, and there we have the introduction of Abrahamic monotheism. Before 300 BC, I don't remember the exact date, you all have heard me quote it before, before 300 and whatever BC, there was no such thing as Abrahamic monotheism, meaning there was no such thing as the one God who ruled everything and sat up in the clouds and told you what to do. That didn't exist. Little pieces of it popped up here and there. There was the worship of Ra. I believe it was Ra in Egypt, and for a while they made Ra the main deity, but it wasn't true monotheism because the other gods were still there. And then you had dualism in the Persian Empire. But again, we're in the empire stage. So that's in the empire stage, things start shifting into this more of this monotheist thing. But by far the king of this phase 1 programming into the negative matrix, the master of it, the one that did it the best, was without a doubt Abrahamic monotheism. Jehovah. I am that I am. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Here are the 10 commandments. When Jehovah says to Moses, if you follow all my commands to the letter, then you love me. And if you love me, then I will do all of these wonderful, beautiful things for you. And then he doesn't say, but if you disobey every single one of my commandments, then you hate me. Because that would be the exact opposite. One is, you obey every single one of my commandments, you love me. You disobey every single one of my commandments, you hate me, right? That's not what he says. Jehovah says, if you follow all of my commandments to the letter, you love me. But if you do not follow all of my commandments to the letter, then you hate me. Meaning, if you do 99% of my commandments, but if you disobey me consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or accidentally, if you miss one of my commandments, then you hate me. And if you hate me, then I will curse you and your children. I'll put boils on you. I'll blah, 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 all the horrible things. This is phase 1. In phase 1, you are programmed psychologically, which is your lower self, and spiritually, the lower self spiritual, your belief about your connection to the universe is disrupted. And you are programmed with powerlessness, a feeling of sinfulness, shame, and guilt. And this is when we enter the age of Pisces. This is when we are entering Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, the evil age. Again, this is what's happening in the 3 phases. So if we look at the first phase of the light side of the mirror, the spiritual matrix, so there's a physical bad matrix and a spiritual good matrix. So this is the phase 1 of the negative matrix, is the psychological spiritual programming of Abrahamic monotheism. Thou shalt do this or I will put you in hell. You are born. The moment that you're born, you're sinful and I'm throwing you into hell. You must be part of this giant religion. You must be part of this empire. Because with the rise of empires, you have the rise of monotheism. You can't, Rome and Greece, they were polytheists, but then they fell and up came this one giant empire with monotheism, if you know your history. So in the phase one of the spiritual matrix, this is lower self evolution. So instead of Jehovah, which by the way, Jehovah is one of the names for the lower self. I am that I am. It's narcissism. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I am all powerful. I am all knowing. You must bow before me and live for my glory. You must not do anything for yourself, but only for me. This is narcissism. And so on the negative side, it's narcissism. On the positive side, you have the lower self evolving, where the identity is connecting to the spiritual matrix, life force energy, chi, prana. And there we have indigenous shamanism. So up to this point, before 2,000 years ago, generally speaking around the world, we had animism. You know, there was only a few empires, but the vast majority of the people in the world were animists. They were shamans. Animism means the belief in the spirit. And it means that you believe that everything in the universe has a spirit. The tree has a spirit. The sky has a spirit. You have a spirit. My coffee cup has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. And you can interact and communicate with the spirit. And the goal of animism or shamanism is to create a dynamic balance with all of the spirits around you. Dynamic balance with the spirits of the ancestors. So phase one in the spiritual matrix, there is a shift from indigenous tribal shamanism and animism, and it starts to evolve into more sophisticated energy practices that connect your physical body to the life force matrix. So your energy body gets connected directly to the matrix. So it's, again, like the movie Matrix, there's these cables that, Neo's plugged in and he unplugs himself from all of the cables. So that's the negative side. The positive side is you seek to have, all the bumps on the back of your neck, all of the, the chakras, the three energy centers. You want these to merge with the quantum field of spiritual power. And here's where this happens. So in phase one of the spiritual matrix, around 2,000 years ago, you see the eruption of higher, more sophisticated, like yoga and mantra and qigong and tai chi and and then in Africa they're coming up with very, very technical drumming that opens up the realms to infinity. So you see this technology beginning to be created, where you're moving directly from just animism into a higher technology of connection to spiritual energy. And so you're seeing yourself move from being in this state of dealing with all these different, spirits to connecting with the one. So you see that it's mirroring itself. On the monotheism side, you're separate from the one narcissist who's pointing his fingers and filling you full of shame and guilt and destroying your identity. But these other paths, the path of Buddhism is coming. Buddhism comes around about the same time that monotheism pops up. That doesn't happen by accident. It's the other side. So Buddhism is saying, die to your attachments, die to the specifics, become one with yourself and with others and with nirvana. So we're seeking that unity. And it's a psychological, spiritual shift. All right? So that's phase one of the spiritual matrix. Phase two of the negative evil matrix, the dark matrix. Phase two of that. This begins right around AD 1700. This is the Age of Enlightenment. This is when the actual shift changes from Kali Yuga, the age of darkness in the Vedic tradition, to Dvapara Yuga, which is the age of half and half. And during Kali Yuga, 10% of the population is awakened and 90% is in darkness. And then around 1700, when people are coming out of the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, you have the Age of Enlightenment. So the Age of Enlightenment is where people move into half and half, where 50% of the population, we haven't got there yet because we're still in Dvapara Yuga. 50% of the population is enlightened and 50% is in the dark. This is the beginning of that. And it's marked by the Age of Enlightenment. And what happens in the Age of Enlightenment? These monotheists start to worship the human form. They start going and resurrecting classical mythology, and it becomes very popular to have Greek statues of the gods everywhere. Their arms are all broken off or whatever, but that means that they're moving to a different phase of awareness. So this is when anyway, so what's happening here is that you have the Age of Enlightenment and also the Industrial Revolution. So what did I say about phase two? Phase two is the technological and intellectual programming. So this is the very beginning of that. You have the Age of Enlightenment, people resurrecting philosophy and humanism, where the human potential and worshiping of the human, and it becomes hip and cool to start, delving into polytheism, resurrecting Norse mythology. This is all happening right around AD 1700. And so you have intellectual knowledge is now really, people are focusing on the mind. This is when science becomes important. So the sciences are born, physics, we start understanding about physics and mathematics and, electricity and, all this stuff. Starts in 1700. And, but what ends up happening on the negative side is that this worship of technology is the intellect divorcing itself from spirituality. And here again, you see the birth of atheism. Atheism is the response when somebody intellectually cannot comprehend anything spiritual. They are consciously aware enough to realize that this Jehovah guy who's standing up there saying, I made the world in 7 days, and all that crazy nonsense, and you're going to go to hell if you don't believe this thing, and drink my blood and eat a wafer, and pray the sinner's prayer, whatever it is. And so because people's intellectual knowledge is gaining in strength as well, they become atheists because they're still in the negative matrix. Their intellect, as powerful as it is disconnected from spirituality. And then, of course, you have, where people are moving away from Catholicism into more of the, Baptist sort of, really intense, I forget the word I'm looking for, you know what I'm talking about. The dogmatism. It's no longer this empty ritual of going to the Catholic Church and listening to the priest do his thing and the holy water. Now they read the Bible, they know what it is, but now the dogma of sin becomes even more intense. This is the second phase where technology starts to become the God. And this is when we start, humans start pumping the atmosphere full of coal and other things like that. It was the beginning of global warming. We can trace it back to the Industrial Revolution. So this is phase 2 of the negative side of the matrix. Now let's look at phase 2 of the spiritual side of the matrix. So here we have the awareness of the higher self. So in the lower matrix, it is intellect. the brain, which is the physical, reflection of the third eye, but without connection to spirituality, which is why people nowadays think that the brain is where all of the consciousness is. Those of us who are spiritual and do energy practices, we know that this is just a brain. This isn't where our consciousness is. This is the giant computer that allows us to intellectualize things. But because the negative side, which isn't spiritual, they worship the intellect. And the more, you hear me telling people, get out of your head, get out of your head. Because that's a way of disconnecting yourself from your emotions and from the spirit. So the intellect is here to serve us, not the other way around. But in the negative side of the matrix, the intellect begins to dominate and control, and it's a very horrible existence. Just living in your intellect. It's horrible. It's empty. All right, so the phase 2 of the spiritual, you start to see the rise of higher spiritual practices. You start to see Taoism really come into its own. You see Hinduism and Vedic practices really coming into a higher level. Mantra science becomes very, very intricate. So these spiritual practices that have moved out of just animism and started moving into more of connecting to spirit, because then you start seeing higher and higher spiritual technologies. While physical technologies, they're starting to, learn how to create all these machines. The spiritual people are starting to learn how to decode the machines in the body, the kundalini and the chakras, the chi power and the 3 dantians. This is happening in this second phase. All right, and the third eye, the understanding of awareness, the understanding of enlightenment, the understanding of achieving nirvana. This is all starting to happen in phase 2, where where you have people who live in mountains. The spiritual people live in mountains, and the unspiritual people live in the city. So you have that shift, but there are people going off to truly open up their third eye through these spiritual practices. This is phase 2, where the third eye connects to infinity. Got it? Phase 3 of the dark side. Phase 3 of the dark side is the middle self. So the first phase is the lower self. The second phase is the higher self. And the third phase is the middle self on both sides of the matrix. So you're either only focusing on the negative, dark side of the lower self in the first part. You're only focusing on the intellect, which is divorced from the spirit, on the negative side with the second phase. And then the third phase, you're focusing on the greed and the impatience of the heart, if you are on the lower end of things. If you're on the spiritual side of things, we'll talk about that. So the phase 3, my apologies if this is confusing. Phase 3 for the lower self, for the dark side of the mirror, starts in 1900. And this again is the digital and biological programming, which we are in now. So the digital and biological programming phase starts around 1900. This is when you have the invention of the telegraph. The first invention of the wireless telegraph, I think, was, way back then. Didn't get fully created until radio. Radio was invented. These we're now getting into the wireless digital age. That's the beginnings of it. Then, of course, we move on into where we are now. The technology becomes greater and greater. We now have, when I was a kid, we had television, where it was this magical thing where, these pictures are floating through the air and they come in through the antenna on the top of my television, and my television takes that and turns it into a picture with sound. And you could watch live broadcasts. They could do things live, and it would come through the air into your antenna, into your television. It's a magical thing. the beginnings of the wireless digital age, and we're in that now. So we're in that phase 3 now. And of course, we get artificial intelligence starts to be created. We have the internet. We have worship of chaos. As we get further and further into the wireless digital age, people become more and more disconnected. We see the rise of more psychological problems, personality disorders, mental health issues, alcoholism, drug addiction. Way back when you used to just have, alcohol and maybe, if you lived other places, you had weed, or maybe you had poppy. You had things you could get addicted to, but, they were pretty crude stuff. But as time went on, we start creating more and more drugs. The drugs become more intense and more addicting, as well as all of the other stuff, television, movies, all this stuff. We start getting addicted to all of this stuff, which creates this, not only this separation, which is what we have in phase 2, where the intellect takes over and people are intellectually separated, and there's the emptiness that comes from the intellect only. Now we are becoming separated in terms of our reality. As it is now, people now, especially kids that have, some kids that are just turning adults now, they haven't lived without internet. And they really don't, my experience, a lot of them really don't know what reality is. They don't have the ability to tell the difference between virtual reality and reality. In fact, some people, especially younger people born nowadays, they want to live in virtual reality. They hate actual reality. It's painful because it's empty, and they want to live in virtual reality. So this is phase 3 on the negative. You see the elites emerging to such a degree where they control this digital matrix that they're creating, and they control us, and they start to reprogram us biologically. This is where we're going now. Phase 3 is the biomatrix. We are now becoming biologically reprogrammed. And just to give you one idea, without breaking YouTube's community guidelines, I'm going to read to you an actual thing that was reported on 60 Minutes on television. So this isn't me making stuff up or talking out of school. This is a real thing that is going on right now. And this is from USA Today, and the title is Fact Check. Military-funded sensor can help detect COVID-19, but it's not a microchip. So you've heard the false conspiracy theory that Bill Gates is seeking to put microchips into your body with the COVID vaccine so that he can monitor your blood and your heart rate and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the fake the fake conspiracy theory says that your information will be uploaded via 5G to the net. Okay, that is false, but it's somebody who is actually talking about something that really is happening. So let's talk about what the true understanding of that technology is that is available now. And again, this is coming from USA Today, published 3:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, April 22nd, 2021. Updated 4:09 Eastern Time, April 22nd, 2021. And the headline is Fact Check. Military-funded sensor can help detect COVID-19, but it's not a microchip. The claim, this is the false claim. A new Pentagon microchip can tell if you have... Oh, no, this is the truth. Sorry. This is the claim that is actually happening. A new Pentagon microchip can tell if you have COVID-19. And it says here, a Facebook post with nearly 4,000 shares and reactions claims the Pentagon has developed a microchip implant equipped with an antenna capable of detecting a COVID-19 infection. And that turned out not to be actual true. That is not actually completely true. This came after a 60 Minutes segment was posted online April 11th, which featured retired Colonel Matthew Hepburn, a former military infectious disease physician who is now a project leader at the Joint Program Executive Office for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Defense. During the interview on 60 Minutes, Hepburn described a sensor that can detect if a person is getting sick, which has been in the making since 2016. So the sensor itself has been in the making since 2016 and could be repurposed from its original use to help detect early cases of COVID-19 and other illnesses. The USA Today article goes on to say the sensor is inert. It's not a microchip. So Facebook gets several details wrong. The green sensor, which is smaller than a grain of rice, is not a microchip. It doesn't have any metal or electronics, according to Profusa, the company that received $7.5 million in federal money in 2016 to develop this sensor. The original goal was to monitor a combat soldier's health in real time in active combat zones. The sensor, first publicized in 2018, is made of hydrogel similar to the tissue found around the arm, where the sensor is placed under the skin by injection, according to Profusa. It is under testing for potential military applications, but is not yet in use, Hepburn said. Quote, Profusa's technology is not a hydrogel chip that will connect you to the internet. Jared Adams, chief of communications for the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, told USA Today in an email. Continued, quote, the Profusa hydrogel is inert, does not have any electrical components, and is of similar material to a contact lens or a corneal implant. The sensor not made for COVID-19 specifically. I'm jumping down later into the article. The sensor can be used as a check engine light, quote unquote, Hepburn told 60 Minutes. Once the person knows they might show symptoms soon, they can take a test or do a blood draw and see what illnesses their bodies are reacting to. While the sensor doesn't directly treat COVID-19 or any other disease, it can provide early detection that allows faster intervention and treatment. All right? So that's fact checked. So the false conspiracy theory meme out there, which says that Bill Gates is creating a microchip that he's going to inject into your body through a vaccine in order to upload your health status to the 5G internet. That none of that is accurate. But what is accurate is that a sensor smaller than a grain of rice, which doesn't have any electrical components, it can be injected into the skin, and you can monitor somebody either, with, some kind of device. And so the logical thinking beyond that is there's an implant that can monitor your body symptoms and tell if you have COVID. So you can see where the thought process is going. People are connecting the dots. They create a conspiracy that we don't know whether it exists or not yet, but we don't have any evidence it does. But things are pointing in that direction. This is what I'm saying. When I'm talking to you about the phase 3 is a digital, biological matrix phase. That's where we're going. The rest of it, I can't talk about on YouTube, but I want to. And so go to Odysee.com, ODYSEE.com. I'm going to keep uploading things, and I will headline it Phase 3 Matrix stuff, and I'll just go on and on about what all that is. But for right now, what you need to know is this. Let's get back to my notes, because I know I have other stuff I want to say here. You do have a choice between these two matrices. And as I've said, the matrix is a mirror. And so what I'm going to be teaching you here, in fact, starting right now, I've already started teaching it with the hands of creation. So if you've learned the hands of creation practice right here, this is why the hands of creation is so important. Because you start to learn the practice of the butterfly, the practice of the mirror. So being able to go in between the mirrors, to jump from one side of the mirror to the other and play them. This is the power of the true shaman master, the power of the wizard. This is what these guys learned how to do. Okay? They learned how to, my teacher would constantly talk about facing the mirror. And you would do things with one half of your body and the other half. You're doing it now if you're doing the yin yang hands. This is about facing the mirror. This right here, the hands are facing the mirror. Okay, so physically doing these exercises will give you the ability to shift back and forth between two sides of the mirror. Now, eventually you get to the place where you can decide which side of the mirror you want to be on without being controlled by either of the matrices. In the beginning, if you want to be controlled by, if you can't, but you don't have any choice but to be controlled by a matrix, you want to be controlled by the spiritual one. The spiritual matrix is going to give you the power to master both sides of the mirror. The dark side of the matrix is going to make you trapped, and you will only stay on the negative side, and you will not master anything. You will be a victim of circumstance. So those of you listening to me, I am always telling you people, do you want to be a victim of circumstance? And people will argue with me and tell me that they feel like they are a victim of circumstance, that they feel like reality is happening to them. That's because it is. But that means that you are trapped on one side of the mirror. The good news is now you know there's two sides and you can learn to shift. You don't feel you can do that by yourself? That's what this is here for. That's what this is here for. And if you don't want to pay, the measly amount of few dollars a month to subscribe to learn that, no problem. I've got free stuff on this channel. The one thing that I recommend that you do, I think the two things that I recommend you do, I don't remember the exact video, but I made a video where I told you if you don't want to pay for it, here's a spiritual practice, do this, and I tell you what practices to do. And I give you multiple choices, but two that would be very powerful would be Thor's hammer or Thor's belt Qigong, along with the Awakening the Immortals Qigong. Do those. That will give you the power to shift into the other side of the mirror. That will release your mind and your awareness and your energy at the same time. Okay? So do that. But also free, go on to odyssey.thunder, what am I saying? Go to odyssey.com, ODYSEE.com, and look for thunderwizard.com, thunderwizard, DOTCOM, just like it is here on YouTube. And I'm going to be telling you what's going on in this new biomatrix, the matrix of biological interface, the digital biomatrix. It is here. We are coming towards that end of days. We are coming towards that apocalypse. We are coming towards Ragnarok. We're also coming towards enlightenment, ascension. Both of these things are happening simultaneously. Which side of that you're on will depend on you. You can decide which side of the mirror you want to be on. Okay? And here's something, I'll leave you with this. Here's what's going to happen. The spiritual realm, which has been hidden by a veil up until now, is going to be revealed. Everything is going to be revealed. All of those people in power, all of the elites, all of the intricate web of global banks and governments and big tech and big pharma and big corporations, and how this has become this web that's controlling the world, and this illusion that there are separate countries and separate governments and all of that. This is all going to come crashing down. But the other side, the spirit, so the veil that holds back what's really happening, what I just described on the physical realm, that's going to become shown. And all this stuff that's happening with the virus and the pandemic is the first stages of that. And I'm here to tell you that the elites will not succeed. It doesn't mean that there won't be dangers and challenges while they're doing their last-ditch effort to completely control the world. But they won't succeed. And the individual will rise up. I mean, by the individual, each one of us as individuals will rise up, and we will overcome that. But the negative side is we will be revealed and we will see what's really happening: politics, government, technology. We'll see what's really happening behind the scenes. Loki's going to peel it back for us. But on the spiritual side, the spiritual side of reality is also going to be revealed. No more guessing. No more trying to, what's out there? What happens when we die? Is there anything? That veil's going to be gone. And last thing I'm going to tell you is it's a 3-phase awareness, right? First phase, we moved from shamanism to life force practices. That was phase 1 of the spiritual awakening matrix. Phase 2, we moved into even higher spiritual practices, really got into high-tech yoga, mantra, Taoism. All of these spiritual, physical movement technologies really started getting very intricate and sophisticated. And we learned about chi, and we learned about kundalini. What's going to happen in phase 3? The energy that has been kept secret for 2,000 years, which is the lightning power of the heart. I told you in the beginning of this video that I haven't really understood. I've been confused why the ancestors are telling me it's time to teach this to the world. This, the stuff that my teachers told me, never mention this to anybody. Don't say it in public. You're not allowed to teach it to anybody without our permission. They have to be this and that. If I had 20 years ago, created this, I mean, there would have been knocks on my door, and there would have been some guys telling me you can't ever do that. Who knows what they would have done to me. But now the masters, I hesitate saying this, but the Grand Master just recently passed away. And when he passed away, I felt something shift. And they're giving me the knowledge that it's now time to give this new knowledge to the world. If you don't want to, do the stuff here that costs you money, I understand that. Go on to my channel, do the Thor's hammer or the Thor's belt exercise, and do the Awakening the Immortals Qigong. That's my gift to you. You can also do the Heaven Earth Qigong meditation. Those 3 things will give you everything I'm telling you about. You want to really get serious about it? Go here and sign up for the Lightning Qigong. Go here and take that course. But this is just the beginning. Just the beginning. The power is coming. So go to Odysee.com and start looking at those videos having to do with the pandemic, because I'm starting to tell you my opinions of what you should and shouldn't do. Of course, you make up your own mind, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start going deep into the rabbit hole. If you want to hear where the elites want to take you, what is coming, I'm going to share it. All right? So that's it. Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. You can go here and then go to Odysee.com and start soaking up that knowledge. We're going to do this together. We are going to be okay. I was upset. You guys remember, I've been upset for the past, week or two. I'm okay now because now I know what's happening, and I'm going to share with you, and I'll do everything in my power to give you all of the tools so that not only will you survive this 3rd phase of the digital biomatrix, but that you will overcome, and they will be defeated. The powers that be, the cabal, the elite, the Illuminati, they're going to lose. And you can be a part of that. All right? So I'll see you over there. Thank you so much. And take care of yourself. And I'll talk to you guys very, very soon.